grandfather is discovered in a pile of debris.
It was apparent the body had been there several days.
Multiple stab-wounds indicate a level of rage.
His whole checking account was emptied.
To catch a killer, detectives must follow a convoluted trail of clues.
We are faced with the ultimate mystery.
And just when the case seems to be going cold, investigators make a game-changing discovery.
We found this. He had a violent criminal history.
You never know who you're dealing with.
It is always a series of events that seem to be disconnected that become very connected indeed. All these things come together to paint a picture of the truth. There's one thing that never changes: murder. A life has been taken. Their stories are now my stories. I never know where a case is going to lead, but I'll never stop until it's solved. Somebody has to look out for the victim. If you kill, I will find you.
There's a guy named Lewis Wright, and it's a kind of a large field area where people use it to dump a lot of trash, appliances and things like this. And Mr. Wright likes to stop there to see if there's anything he can find that maybe he can resell, pick up a couple extra bucks.
He's out walking around the field and he's thinking, something smells kind of funny.
He thought there's a dead animal around here somewhere. And as he continued to look around, he saw what he thought was a mannequin that somebody may have thrown away under a bunch of branches. Oh, God! He knew right away that this is no mannequin. This is a dead body.
Far away, Joe Kenda is finally able to think about something other than work.
I was heading back to my office in my car, and I realized I hadn't eaten that day, so I stopped and picked something up real quick. I was particularly bad about that. I only eat because I must, not because I like to. Luckily, I had just enough time to finish my lunch.
Dispatch to Kenda.
When the radio called,
Go for Kenda.
Jenny, you've been requested to respond to a reported body found near Fontaine and Mark Shuffle Road.
this area borders the line between the city of Colorado Springs and unincorporated El Paso County.
10-4 on the way, 10 out.
So there's a potential jurisdiction issue. If the body is in El Paso County, then it becomes the investigation of the El Paso County Sheriff's Department. If the body is discovered within the city limits, obviously it becomes ours. Because of the location being in question, both agencies are on the scene until jurisdiction can be determined.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Steve, how you been? Murder business. Yeah, unfortunately, business has been good, huh? This brings us to the point.
One of the detectives who wound up with this case was Steve Gensel. Gensel had been in the Sheriff's Department a long time. I knew him well. I thought he was an excellent detective.
I gotta warn you, it smells pretty bad over here.
With Colorado Springs Police Department and with Joe Kenda, everybody works together in getting that person before a jury and getting a conviction.
That is bad.
When a human body is left outdoors in intense sunlight and intense heat, the decomposition becomes very, very quick, and you have the odor of death coming from this body.
Hey, sir, the person who found the body said that it was partially covered in his branches. He removed some of it before he realized it was a human. Another unusual thing, as you can see, he's only dressed in socks and boxer shorts.
Whoever is responsible for this apparently believed that by removing his clothing and taking away his wallet, he would never be identified.
Somebody definitely wanted him dead.
Yes, sir. We counted at least a dozen stab wounds on him.
Multiple stab wounds indicate a level of rage that the victim knows his killer and vice versa. The crime scene is indicative of this being a dump site. The attack took place in another location that is currently unknown, and then the body is dumped.
Any witnesses?
No, sir, none yet. We're still scouring the area trying to find somebody.
It's the ultimate mystery. Where did this crime occur? And most importantly, who is the victim?
Based on the location of this body, it falls within our jurisdiction.
It was determined that the El Paso County Sheriff's Department are the lead people on that case.
Okay, so what can we do to help?
I'd like to ID this gentleman. Can you check your missing persons reports and see if you get a match?
Absolutely. Touch base with you later.
Thanks, Jim.
When you discover just the body, there's multiple facets within the investigation that need to be addressed immediately. One, identification of who the person is, and two, where the murder occurred at.
The most obvious choice is a missing persons report. This person isn't where they're supposed to be. Does somebody know that, and did they report it to the police?
While Kenda heads back to the station to scour missing persons reports, sheriff's deputies catch wind of a new lead.
Detective, there's an individual over here by the name of Scott Allen. May I have some information about the case he'd like to speak with? Mr. Allen, this is the detective I was telling you about.
Understand you got something for me?
I was heading home from work the other night, and I saw a red truck with its headlights beaming into the darkness.
The only witness to this event was a construction worker named Scott Allen, who tells the detectives that he saw a red truck with the headlights on, parked on the side of the road in the exact spot where these officers are.
Did you get a license plate or anything?
No, sorry, I didn't. Look, maybe it was nothing, but since I saw you guys out here, I thought I should mention it.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mr. Allen didn't have very much information,
We need a lot more than that.
but they made a note about a red truck seen in the area, which at the moment is insignificant, but may become significant later in the investigation.
The El Paso Sheriff's Department is asking for the public's help this evening. A local man scouring the area for spare parts found more than he bargained for when he ran into human remains this morning.
Back in the day, the only way to get news out to the public was to have it be broadcast on a newscast.
Law enforcement is asking that any information be reported to police tip lines and non-emergency numbers.
Back at CSPD headquarters, recent missing persons reports.
So how's it going?
Say we finish up this first set of reports and we can't find anything. There's no matches yet.
All right, let's keep looking.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
This occurred in 1989. You don't snap your fingers and consult your massive computer files on your portable devices. You start paging through missing persons reports, which are kept in a file.
Genzel.
Yeah, Steve, it's Kenda. Yeah, I'm just not seeing anything in here that matches up with your guy. All right.
I'm headed to the morgue in the morning. I'll keep you posted.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.
So what do we got, Doc?
Well, I've counted 13 stab wounds. The body's in early stages of decomposition, so I would estimate he's been deceased roughly 72 hours.
Knowing an approximated time or day that the person was killed, that offers investigators a timeline to find where this person was last alive.
We located one more thing that you might find helpful. A set of dentures. You see the writing there? I believe that's his name.
No kidding. Cast on the side of the denture plate itself, written underneath the clear coating, was COOK.
Thanks, Doc. You just made my week. Good luck.
Now we have the last name of our victim. This is Mr. Cook. Who made Mr. Cook look like this? We have found remains determined to be in El Paso County, resulting in the El Paso County Sheriff's Department to become the lead investigators in what is obviously a homicide. We discover a victim has been stabbed 13 times in the chest and has been dead for 3 days. We're now at the point to where the dentures indicate a last name on this victim of Cook.
But it's a local news segment that delivers investigators their next big lead.
Christina Green. I'm Detective Gansel.
Nice to meet you.
Christina reports that she watched the evening news about this body that had been found and has a bad feeling that this could be her father, who she hasn't seen or heard from for a few days.
What is your father's name?
John Cook.
Knowing that the denture plate had the name Cook, there was a higher degree of probability that the body we had was in fact that of John Cook.
Was it my dad?
Look, we haven't confirmed it yet. But I'm afraid there is a strong possibility that it is your father.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry.
Dad was a retired contractor. When he retired, he was constantly fixing something for somebody. And he was very jovial, lighthearted, happy.
John Cook was my grandfather. We spent a lot of time together. We built a clubhouse in my backyard, which still stands today. I remember him teaching me a little bit about carpentry, a lot about hard work. The man worked every day.
When was the last time you saw your father?
A few days ago. Dad was going to someone's house that he knew to fix their roof, and I did not know where that was. He was supposed to call me back that evening, and never did.
She described her father as last seen wearing Wrangler jeans.
When he didn't get back with me, I went by his house the next day, and he wasn't there, and neither was his red truck.
He drove a red truck?
Yeah.
Detective Gansel wonders, was it John's truck that construction worker Scott Allen saw parked at the crime scene?
You wouldn't happen to know the plate number for that truck, would you?
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Christina provides that to Gansel.
Thank you very much.
And Gansel issues a statewide alert that this is the truck that belonged to the victim in this homicide, and that truck is missing.
Within hours, a CSPD officer spots a vehicle that matches the description.
By the afternoon, a patrol officer on routine patrol finds a red truck with the correct plate. So he contacts the apartment building manager.
Do you know whose truck this is?
No, I don't. It's been there for a couple of days, though.
Okay, thank you, sir. 159 dispatch, I've located that truck.
I called Gansel and I said, hey, we have your truck. Give him the address. The officer agrees to wait to meet them. Sheriff's detectives, including Gansel, respond to that location and recover that truck for evidentiary value.
The cab of the truck is littered with debris.
Detective Gansel.
But one small piece of paper stands out.
Inside of the vehicle was a receipt from a local store where some roofing materials had been purchased.
It's dated 3 days before we found the body, and it says he was there at 9:57 a.m. Guess we can assume he's still alive at that point. Take it and take it for me, will you?
The next question becomes, did he make it from the purchase of the materials to the actual job site? Or was he interrupted in between?
That same afternoon, Detective Gansel arranges for a search of John Cook's home, assisted by Cook's daughter, Christina.
Just to warn you, the house is probably a bit of a mess.
The Sheriff's Department wants to see if evidence can be obtained from the house that may lead them to the identification of a suspect.
If you don't mind, I'd like the officers to go in first. Just make sure everything's clear. Clear. Okay, come on in. Thank you.
In John Cook's house, you could tell that he lived alone, kind of a bachelor type place. There was still a piece of cake on his table, indicating that he didn't plan on being gone too long.
Sure nobody's been here?
He's messy, but pretty organized with the paperwork. This is his records book. He keeps all his clients' information in here.
He would keep daily diaries of the different kinds of jobs that he would have.
There's nothing here listed from the day he disappeared.
I'm looking for his checkbook.
It's not there?
No. He always keeps it right here.
Since I was in banking, he always banked with me, and so I was familiar with his banking habits and what he did and why.
Okay, we're gonna need to check those accounts. I'd like you to go to the bank with Deputy Ira here and make sure that there's no unusual activity. Do you have credit cards?
He has a few, but he hardly ever uses them.
Take the credit cards too. Okay.
When we have a victim who's been murdered, you look to why was this person killed? So they would have to look into banks' credit cards to see if there was a robbery or something that would cause someone to kill another person for financial gain.
Concluding the search,
It's empty!
Christina returns with some startling news.
What's empty?
His bank account. Somebody drained his account.
Her father's checking account was emptied for the amount of $350. All he had in the world was $350.
We even had the bank pull his credit card statements. Apparently somebody's been making a lot of purchases within the last few days.
Criminals are well aware that missing credit cards are reported immediately. They therefore make purchases before the card is closed off.
There have been purchases at electronics store and places he would never shop. Someone is using my dad's card.
Guess we got our suspect number one.
Across town at the CSPD,
Hey, Lieutenant.
Hey,
Kenda's men are making inroads of their own.
We got an anonymous tip.
okay.
He didn't say much, but he did leave a name.
Hey, who's the name?
He says the name of the person who killed John Cook.
Really?
Well, my. Who might that be? We're assisting the El Paso County Sheriff's Department in the investigation of the murder of John Cook when our intelligence division receives an anonymous tip saying that they know the name of the suspect in this case.
He left the name of Carlos Torres.
Can you say anything else?
Just that Mr. Torres is very dangerous.
Okay, go ahead and run the name.
Yes, sir.
We do a little research on Carlos Torres, and he does live in the area, and he is on probation for credit card fraud.
When you know that your victim in this homicide was also a victim of credit card fraud, you think right away, well, okay, we've got a viable suspect.
Ansel.
That's Kenda. So listen, we had someone calling a tip about the Cook murder.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we looked into it. It looks like it's got some promise.
That's great news.
Kenda made contact and he said Carlos Torres may be involved with the use of credit cards. So with that information, we made contact with his probation officer.
Well, Carlos got himself into some trouble by stealing his roommate's credit card and going on a little shopping spree. From what I can tell, he's been on a straight and narrow. He's made all his meetings and followed all the court orders.
The probation officer says that Torres has done what he's supposed to do. He's reported in on every occasion. He is following the rules as far as anybody knows.
Do you have the name of the roommate he was stealing from?
Kane Albaran. Baron, I know that name.
Genzel recalls that he saw the name Albaran in John Cook's workbook. It's not a particularly common name, so Genzel is hopeful that this has a connection. Suddenly, Mr. Torres becomes even more interesting.
You have the contact information for Albaran? I'd like to talk to him about Torres. Sure, it's in this file. I made a copy of it for you, so you can take the whole thing. And here's a picture of Carlos's mugshot. That's great. Thanks. Well,
Dispatch, can you reach out to a Kane Albaran for an interview?
This matter has to be closed. Torres is either involved in this case or he is. So detectives talk to Mr. Albaran.
So what do you want to know about Carlos?
We understand he was using your credit cards without permission?
Yeah, we were living together and I started to see all these random charges pop up on my card. Then I noticed Carlos seemed to have a whole wardrobe. Where'd you get those Jordans, Carlos?
Man, what are you talking about?
Those things aren't cheap, right?
Yeah, so whatever, I got money.
Since when? You're 2 months behind on paying your share of the bills around here. So we started to get into it, and I just flat out asked him if he had been using my card.
An argument ensued and Kane called the police, and during that conversation, Torres admitted to the fraud.
Why are you asking about Carlos? Did he do it again?
No, we're not sure. Might be a lot more serious than credit card fraud. You know John Cook?
He says to repair work on his apartment, and he hadn't seen him for some time.
What about Carlos? Did he know Mr. Cook?
No. I don't think Carlos was around when John was working on the apartment.
He felt fairly certain that Torres and John Cook never knew each other, and there'd be no connection for him to be tied to the John Cook homicide case.
Even if he knew John Cook, he's not a killer. And I lived with him. There's no way.
Genzel and his team are beginning to have their doubts that Carlos Torres is their man. To rule him out completely,
Hello.
Hi.
they take up a new strategy.
I'm Detective Genzel, El Paso Sheriff's Department. Mind if I ask you a few questions?
Sure. How can I help you?
So Genzel goes to one of the electronic stores, and he speaks to a female clerk that was working on the day that a fraudulent purchase was made on John Cook's credit card.
I don't know, sir. I see a lot of customers every day. But we catalog our receipts. Want me to take a look?
Would you please?
At that point, 1989, they didn't have the same electronic receipts that they do now. But the clerk was able to pull out a box from underneath the counter where the other receipts were at,
Looks like you bought a VCR.
and pulled out the receipt for the transaction with the name of John Cook on the signature line.
Did you ask to see his ID to see if it matched the credit card?
No, sir. I guess I didn't. Please don't tell my boss, okay? But listen, I think I remember him. He was acting kind of strange and creeped me out a little.
Why would this particular person stand out? It's because you kind of get that weird vibe from people sometimes, that maybe something about them just isn't right.
I didn't want to blow the sale and lose my commission, so I didn't give him a hard time.
Do you think you remember what he looked like?
Yeah, I think he was Latino.
She was able to describe the person as being Hispanic male, 30s, dark hair, and having a mustache. And this was not the physical attributes of John Cook.
What about this guy? You recognize him?
Nope, never seen him before.
Ultimately, Carlos Torres was eliminated. There was nothing that could link him whatsoever to John Cook's credit cards.
It appears the anonymous tip that once seemed so promising has turned out to be a dead end. But if Carlos Torres didn't kill John Cook, then who did? To help answer that question, Detective Genzel asks the store clerk for one more favor.
Would you mind coming back to the sheriff's station and describing the man who made the purchase to one of our sketch artists?
Sure, I guess. I get off in about an hour.
Thank you. Want to hang on to this?
It is always useful to make a composite sketch of someone in the event that someone can identify that composite drawing as a particular individual.
Later that day, the completed sketch is distributed throughout the city. In the meantime, investigators decide to circle back to the crime scene.
I got with Detective Mitchell and another detective and said, could you go back to the crime scene and search if we can find anything else, anything that may help the investigation.
You finding anything?
Nah. Bunch of damn junk. What about you?
Nah. Let's keep looking.
They go through all the shrub, all the dirt, trying to find something that would link to the victim.
After several hours of searching with nothing to show for it, investigators are about to lose hope when something unexpected catches their eye.
Mitchell sees a car driving by very slowly.
What the hell is he doing here?
Who's that?
It's this guy named Frank Arona. He's been on a DUI recently.
He knew that Frank had just been arrested and lost his driver's license and shouldn't be driving. And then he lived way on the other side of town, so it raised his suspicion. He left the scene not finding anything, but always had it in the back of his mind that, what was Frank Arona doing out there at that scene, driving by there?
Later that day, Kenda is checking up on his other cases.
Lieutenant, I ran multiple searches and nothing's come up yet on those monitors.
All right, let's try a few different spellings before moving on.
Okay.
We get a call from CSPD Pond Detail that they have something really good in that SO case involving Mr. Cook.
Great. What's going on?
The police department has a division that works with local pawn shops. It's a way to discover things that have been pawned by criminals.
Lieutenant Kenda, I've got Detective Mitchell from El Paso Sheriff's Department down here. You're not going to believe this.
Well, try me. I might believe it. We're assisting the El Paso County Sheriff's Department in their investigation of the John Cook homicide, and our pawn shop detail has come across something of great interest in regard to their case.
Hey, gentlemen. So, what have you got so far?
Detective Mitchell here had a hunch. He checked the pawn division's records. Looks like it paid off.
Really?
Yeah, your pawn detail says that somebody pawned a VCR that was purchased using one of John Cook's credit cards.
The receipt from the pawn shop shows that the VCR serial number on the pawn ticket is identical to the serial number of the device purchased that same day using John Cook's stolen credit card.
Was there any name on the pawn receipt? Any contact info for the pawn to protect?
Yeah, this guy Frank Arona.
I just happened to see him out at our crime scene yesterday doing a slow drive-by. Thought it was strange, so we checked the records for his name. Happened to get lucky.
Seeing Frank Arona near the crime scene and the positive identification of the pawn slips showing his identification, that then created a link between Frank Arona and at least him using the credit cards of John Cook.
Take a look at this.
Mitchell has the composite sketch of the individual who purchased the VCR, and he believes it has a close resemblance to Frank Arona.
Wow, looks just like him. Great work, Mitchell.
I've got some of the other store clerks where purchases were made come in and see if they can ID Frank Arona from a photo lineup.
Okay, yeah. So, what do you need from us?
Let me check the CSPD file, see if there's anything else we need to know about Arona.
Okay, we'll let you know as soon as we find something. Nice work.
Thank you.
A few hours later, Kenda learns about Frank Arona's long history on the wrong side of the law.
I pull a criminal history jacket for Mr. Frank Arona, and Mr. Arona has an extensive criminal record. Among charges listed was a kidnapping and robbery of a grocery store employee, to which he pled no contest and received 5 years probation. More recently, 1 week before John Cook's murder, he was arrested again for DUI. And he posted bond, but he didn't have any other money he could use to get his personal car out of the police impound lot.
Can I help you?
Yeah, I'm looking for a vehicle that was impounded within the last week or so. It's registered to a Frank Arona.
Let me see what I can do.
I want to know if the vehicle is still there, because if it's not, he somehow came up with the money to get his car back.
Nope. That car was picked up by its owner.
Frank Arona?
One and the same. Looks like he paid his fee in cash, and that was on September the 26th.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
The investigators revealed that the day he paid that bill was the same day that John Cook's bank account was emptied out. Pretty good lead right there.
the sheriff's office to lock down the identity of his suspect.
You recognize any of these guys?
Through a photo lineup.
Gensel uses the mugshot from our records file to make a photo lineup.
That's him. That's the guy from last week.
You're sure that's him?
I only get a few dozen customers a day, and I have a great memory.
That's great news. Thank you.
Arona is being positively identified by many clerks. There is now sufficient probable cause to believe that Mr. Arona is involved in this case. A search warrant is obtained to search Mr. Arona's home.
Seeger, cover the back in case he rabbits.
You ready?
Hit it. Frank Arona, open the door. Sheriff's Department, come out with your hands up. Hit it again. Frank Arona, open the door.
You guys are a little overly dramatic, aren't you?
Step aside. We have a warrant to search your premises.
We went inside the residence to conduct the search, and various other investigators went to speak with the neighbors about anything they may know about Frank Arona.
Inside the home, Gensel informs Arona why they're there.
You're not under arrest at this time, but we have reason to believe that you committed credit card fraud.
No, I done nothing like that. Y'all can knock yourselves out, you ain't gonna find nothing.
Arona says he's confused. Why would they want to search his place for anything? But he sits down while they search.
And he's pretty nonchalant about it, sitting there drinking beer, watching television while they're searching the house.
While the officers move from room to room, Detective Gensel seizes the opportunity to question Arona.
While I got you here, I'd like to talk to you about the murder of John Cook.
I got nothing to say to you or anybody else.
He looked at me and said, I don't want to say anything. I want to talk with an attorney. Well, people certainly have a right to invoke their right to remain silent.
Detective Gensel, I think you should come next door. It's important. Mitchell. Keep an eye on this guy. I'll be back in a minute.
It was relayed to me that the neighbors knew something that would help the investigation.
I understand you folks have something to tell me?
Yes, it's about our neighbor Frank. We heard about John Cook's death in the news.
That's fine. I'll tell him. We saw Frank and John Cook together the day John was murdered.
Well, that certainly is interesting. What else did you see, dear? The Sheriff's Department is now in a position to conclude this investigation. They know a great deal about Frank Arona, and they're learning more every minute. And now we have neighbors who provide the tip that pushed this case over the edge.
We saw John with Frank the day he was murdered.
Wait, you two knew John Cook?
Yes. Through Frank Arona's mother, Rosemary.
They tell Gensel Rosemary Arona owned the house and was a very nice woman and lived there for many, many years. And when she died, Frank Arona moved in, and there's been nothing but trouble ever since.
Not a nice person.
Yeah, he would fly off the handle for no reason.
What about John Cook? You say you knew him through Frank's mother?
He would come over to Rosemary's house and do some work for her when she was still alive. And then we saw John's truck in Frank's driveway.
They assumed he was there to do repairs on the house, as he had done in the past. Then they saw something very unusual. John Cook got in the passenger side.
Why would John let Frank drive his truck?
And Frank Arona got into the driver's side of the truck, and they left the area.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Gloria and I kept records. He was such a loose cannon, I knew this would come in handy someday.
The neighbors did keep a diary of dates, times, vehicles, which was an immense asset for law enforcement.
Is there anything else you want to tell me?
Oh, a few days after this, Frank was burning his furnace for some god-awful reason.
They said whatever he was burning had a terrible, terrible odor, and they both wondered what it could be that he had in that stove.
You mind if I hang on to this?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. You've been very helpful.
Thank you.
Back inside Frank Arona's house, the search is wrapping up.
As investigators were going through the home, they positively identified items that were purchased on John Cook's credit card, various electrical components, a leather coat, shoes.
Find anything?
Yeah. Here, take a look at these.
We also discover Frank Arona is in debt to the tune of $3,500.
Are these all bills?
Yeah.
All the financial burdens were crashing down on him. So it was becoming evident through the investigation that he used the credit cards and ultimately pawned the items to satisfy some debt. The reason for the homicide was just money, nothing else.
We searched his furnace like you asked. We found this.
A Wrangler blue jean button was discovered, as well as a rivet from blue jeans inside of the ashes inside of the home of Frank Arona.
John's daughter told me 4 Wranglers. Make sure you log that.
When John Cook was discovered, he was in a pair of boxer shorts and socks because his Wrangler jeans were burning in Frank Arona's stove, and the brass button establishes that.
Mr. Arona, please stand up.
Huh?
On your feet.
With the evidence that was found inside of his home, plus the witnesses placing John Cook there.
You're under arrest for first-degree murder.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I arrested Frank Arona on the murder of John Cook.
Let's go.
Once in custody, Frank Arona reasserts his right to remain silent. But at this point, detectives have a clear idea of what transpired.
If you consider the facts, consider this, that Frank Arona is depressed. He lost his mother. He doesn't have any money. He's being pursued by debt collectors. He becomes a pretty desperate guy.
You gotta be kidding me.
And with all the bad luck he'd been having, now he's got a leak in his roof. So he calls John Cook and says, "Hey, can you come over and patch my roof up for me?"
Okay.
John knew the Arona family.
That shouldn't be too hard to do.
I don't think John Cook went over there with any worries, just to do a job, maybe make a few dollars.
You got a ladder?
Yeah.
When John Cook arrives to make that repair, he presents himself to a criminal.
And for whatever reason, Frank thought that John had a lot of money and could help him get out of debt.
John Cook was 72 years old, and John was a frail man, so he did mark him as an easy target.
And I think that should hold that leak for a few days. You're gonna have to get a roofer up there soon. Like I told your mother, sooner or later that roofer's gonna go. What's this?
What's it look like? I need money. Just shut up, old man. You listen to me and you won't die.
He makes a threat and asks him to go to his bank.
Look, I don't have much, but you can have it.
Yeah, I will. Now move. Move!
And he got John to get into his own vehicle with him. Then from there, Frank drove to 2 different banks and withdrew all the money that John Cook had in the world, $350.
I told you I didn't have much.
Shut up.
Look, I did what you asked. I want to go home.
No, not yet. Someone needs you to do for me first.
Arona obviously knows if he releases John, he's going to get arrested again. So Mr. Cook needs to die.
He didn't want to kill him out in public somewhere. The safest place to do that would be Eddie's house.
Look, I did everything you said. You don't have to do this.
When you look at the viciousness of the attack, stabbed 13 times, that's overkill. I think Frank was upset that John only had $350. He wanted more money than that. And just continually stabbed him until he was dead.
He disrobes the victim after he kills him, burns the evidence in his wood-burning stove, including the victim's clothing, and he disposes of Mr. Cook as if he is yesterday's trash.
John never did anything to Frank. What an awful way for somebody to leave you. And for what? For really nothing.
They found him guilty of first-degree murder, among other charges. And even though the jury didn't come back with the death penalty, justice was finally closed for the family. They did have closure.
Nice work.
A day has never gone by that I don't think of him or what happened. So it's been really, really hard. I would like everyone to know how much he loved all of his family.
My grandpa was greatly missed in my childhood. This loss has taught me the importance of each and every day that we get to spend with our family members. Tomorrow is never promised.
John Cook was a responsible member of the community who loved his children, who carried on an honest life. His only crime? He encounters a monster, Frank Arona, and loses his life in the process.